Alright everybody, we're here ready for Manic Monday in Wimbledon. It's a little bit more like Rainy Monday here today in New York City. I have my whites on, and why do I have my white shirt on? In honor of a grass court tournament that actually played like a grass court. We actually had a slippy grass court last week, and we did see some injuries unfortunately, but we also saw a lot of variety and a different type of skill set was required than what you usually would see in today's tennis, which is great because tennis has so much variety to it, and I just love to see like the different types of skill sets that have to come out. But in order for that to happen, something has to be a little quick about the conditions. I mean, the climate or the surface or the ball, and in this case, it certainly wasn't the climate or it wasn't the ball, but the surface was wetter on top than it has been in a long time. The perennial ryegrass that they went to over 10 years ago was supposed to be a stronger grass, and it stands straight up, so there's more aeration. The air gets into the surface below. The soil below has a higher clay content now, so it's a harder surface, especially when it dries out. So the harder surface equals a higher bounce. The rougher grass kind of slows the ball just a bit too, better than it used to. And it's better footing because there's a little more dirt for the foot to grab onto. And it all tends to go more towards the hard court, and if it rips up a lot, if it's a dry, hot couple of weeks like it was in 2010, it becomes almost a complete dirt court. I call it dirt ball. The year Nadal won, by the championship, he was doing a somersault after his victory right near the net, and it was all dirt. He was rolling in dirt. It was unbelievable. So not this year, not last year either, but this year is even more slippery. This year, it was from what I've talked with my source at Lima Grain, we feel that most likely what has happened, because it was not something done by the Wimbledon officials, they made the exact same specifics as in the prior years. It was the exact same grass blend, 3 different types of perennial ryegrass, and it was the same amount of clay in the soil base, same amount of compaction, same cut, 8 millimeters. Everything was the same scientifically. But the climate conditions were cold and rainy like it's been everywhere this year, and in the winter and into the spring. So right now there's probably more moisture trapped that is still coming up through the soil than what you usually would have in June. This moisture is coming in to the grass blades and making them slippery. You know, moist grass is slippery. Now, I'm here in one of my favorite places in Central Park, on Riverside Park, on the west side, right by the West Side Highway over here. I call it The Rock. In my next video, I'll show you a little bit around here and tell you more about this for a minute and how I relate that to Wimbledon as well. The grass courts in Wimbledon, I mean. But let me just say for now, the slippery grass required a much softer footing, more balanced in general, a different creative process in the brain, a way to construct points, and different set of skills, dink and dunk, slice and dice at the net a little bit. And the people that incorporated this more did great. Now, some people like Stakhovsky, for instance, who upset Federer, they play this type of style naturally. And they're usually left out in the big tournaments where everything's slower, for sure. A guy like Donald Brown, I like to call him Jamaican Brown. He's German, but he's originally from Jamaica. He's done great on the challenger circuit for years on carpets and old, fast surfaces that they don't use on the ATP circuit anymore. So it was fun to see him have some success at a Grand Slam and use his specific skill set. And then others who are, top of the line and really good, were able to adjust easier. And it's a shame that Roger Federer is just not 100% right now, which I commented on in my draw preview, because he would have loved this. But he's also changed his game a lot and is more of a baseliner now. Back in the day, he would have really loved this grass. And someone who's not here, Venus, her laser bullets, again, if she was healthy, would have loved it as well. So this week we will see dirt start to appear, but it won't be that bad compared to other years because the weather has been cooperating. We're still going to have a lot of grass as long as you're not on the baseline. And even the grass on the baseline is looking like it's dying, but it's not being ripped up like usual. So that just tells me that the base there's more water in the soil base than what we usually see at this point. So the grass is dying, but it's still there. So brown grass will be more slippery than just dirt. So again, we may not get much dirt, even until the end of the week at least, in time for Murray Djokovic maybe. We'll have a little bit of dirt ball. But this brown stuff that you're seeing on the baseline is still going to be pretty slippery and until it actually comes out of the ground, and then we have just dirt. So that's what happened the first week. That's why you saw the upset. Sure, there's some problems with some people's bodies. It's a long season. It's rough tennis now. The slower type of tennis, it's grinding. The tour, the pressures of the media, just the lifestyles now, it's grinding on these players, both men and women. So at this point in the season, we see a lot of dropouts and injuries. We've actually probably seen more this year leading up to Wimbledon than we even saw last year. So possibly, so many people have had so much time off now because they've not been well. We may have a better U.S. Open. The last 2 years at the U.S. Open, everybody starts dropping like flies, it seems like. Maybe not this year because people have had more rest because they were a little more under the weather throughout most of this year. But in this particular case, while some of that is true, mostly it was about the conditions, the slipping, both in style of play, the ball slipping through the court. And by the way, this is still a soft, slow ball. It's light, but it's very soft and bouncy. It's just the court was so slippery. If they were using their old lively, heavier ball, but it was heavier, but it was very lively, a very highly compressed air inside. That ball, it would have really been fast. It would have been, probably unplayable with the rackets today. It would have been ace, ace, ace. So that would have been unfair. But with this ball, it's pretty fair. I mean, it's slippery, but the big thing is the players had to know, and the Wimbledon officials didn't know this was going to happen. Why not the practice courts? The practice courts probably aren't compacted quite as much, so they're a little softer. Maybe not quite as, they've also had a lot of playing time on it. And even the outer courts, outside of center court, court one, the outer courts get some play from the members. So those were a little better. The practice courts got a lot of play, and people weren't competing on the practice courts like they're going to compete in a match. That was why that was okay, and nobody was complaining until the matches started, especially on center court, court one, court two. The other thing is, why weren't the other courts in the summer season, the grass courts like in Holland and Eastbourne and Howley and everywhere else, even Queens, why weren't they this fast? Again, not as good at compaction. Also, the grass on top maybe not as highly manicured, maybe a little more weeds, bad bounces. Plus the weather, it was colder earlier in the summer in the UK, a little bit. But also there was wind, there was rain, there was just a lot of things. Not that we're not getting that in London, but not to the extent. Even Queens a couple of weeks ago, it was worse off, a lot more rain than what London's getting right now. So I think the weather combined with the way that the courts are taken care of in these other places, they're so highly manicured in Wimbledon that every little thing can make a huge difference. And right now, that water that's still coming up, the moisture that's still coming up from the base, is affecting play. It won't be as bad this week, but it's still not going to be that slow, maybe until the very end of the week for like the semifinals or the championships. But even then, I don't think it's not going to be anything like we had in 2010 or 2011, and it will most likely be faster than last year. But we're still probably heading to Djokovic, Murray, and we'll see what Wanska or Serena or, at this point, maybe Kvitova on the other side. Stay tuned if you want to see more about The Rock on my next video.